I still remember the exact second I realized everyone in that courtroom thought I was already finished. You know that feeling when people stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as an outcome, like the verdict's been decided before anyone even opens their mouth? That was me, standing alone at the defense table wearing a borrowed blazer, holding a folder so thin it looked almost insulting compared to the mountain of files stacked neatly across from me. And across that room sat my ex-husband Daniel Cross, leaning back in his chair smiling like this was all just a formality before lunch. The judge hadn't even walked in yet, and Daniel was already whispering to his lawyer, shaking his head, chuckling. I could hear pieces of it drifting over. "She doesn't even have an attorney," he said loud enough on purpose. "I mean, come on, this is going to be quick." His lawyer smirked the kind of smile people wear when they're paid a lot of money to look confident. They both glanced at me like I was a kid who'd wandered into the wrong room. I didn't look back, not because I was scared, but because I'd spent years learning what happens when you react to men like Daniel. He fed on it. Any sign of discomfort, anger, hurt, that was his fuel, and I was done feeding him. What's funny is if you'd asked me a year earlier, I would have told you Daniel was charming. The kind of guy who walked into a room and made people feel like he was doing them a favor just by noticing them. Successful, well-dressed, always talking about the next big move. I used to think that confidence meant safety. Turns out, sometimes it just means someone's really good at hiding their worst instincts. The night everything fell apart didn't start dramatically. No screaming, no thrown plates. Just a quiet dinner I cooked after work, waiting at a table set for two while he scrolled through his phone like I wasn't even there. When I finally asked who he was texting, he didn't deny it. He didn't apologize either. He just shrugged and said, "Things haven't been exciting for a while." Like boredom was a valid excuse to burn down a marriage. That was the moment I realized I wasn't married to a partner. I was married to a man who believed he deserved more just for existing. When we separated, Daniel promised to be fair. He said it with that calm voice people use when they're lying to themselves. But a few weeks later, I got the paperwork. His terms. His numbers. His version of fair left me with scraps and him with everything we'd built together. The house, the savings investments I hadn't even known existed. When I questioned it, he smiled and said, "You should really get a lawyer if you want to understand this stuff." I tried. I really did. Consultations, hourly. Rates retainers that looked like phone numbers. Every conversation ended the same way. "We can help you. If you can afford us." And I couldn't. Not without draining what little safety net I had left. So I made a decision that scared the hell out of me. I would represent myself. People warned me not to. Friends, co-workers, even the legal assistant at the courthouse raised her eyebrows when I said I'd be going in alone. "That's brave," she said, which is what people say when they mean this is going to be ugly. And yeah, it was terrifying. Late nights reading legal guides, watching courtroom videos, learning words I never thought I'd need. But there was something grounding about it too. For the first time since the marriage ended, I wasn't waiting for someone else to save me. Still, nothing prepares you for the moment you walk into that courtroom and realize how small you look to everyone else. Daniel had a full legal team. Suits, laptops, confidence spilling everywhere. I had my folder, my notes, and a knot in my stomach that refused to go away. When the judge finally entered and asked if both sides were ready, Daniel nodded like a man ordering coffee. When she turned to me and asked if I had representation, I took a breath to answer. That's when the door opened. The sound cut through the room in a way I can't fully explain. Calm footsteps. Unrushed. Purposeful. A man walked in wearing a simple navy suit, no flash, no performance. He didn't scan the room, didn't look impressed or intimidated. He walked straight toward me, set his briefcase down, and leaned in just enough to say, "You okay?" I hadn't seen my father in person in almost 2 years. Before I could even process how he was there, he stood up, faced the judge, and said, "Your Honor, Michael Hayes appearing as counsel for the respondent." The room shifted. You could feel it. Daniel's smile vanished so fast it was almost funny. His lawyer froze for half a second too long. The judge's expression changed from routine to alert. Here's the thing about my father, he never bragged about his career. He never had to. People who knew, knew. He'd spent decades in courtrooms like this one. He'd taught law. He'd argued cases people still talked about in hushed tones. And Daniel had no idea who he was. My dad didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He asked simple questions, precise ones, about accounts Daniel hadn't disclosed, transfers that didn't add up, expenses that somehow vanished from the official filings. Each document he placed on the table felt heavier than the last. Daniel tried to interrupt once. My dad didn't even look at him. "Please speak through your attorney," he said calmly, and that was enough. By the time the judge called a recess, Daniel looked like a man realizing the ground beneath him wasn't solid after all. His lawyer whispered urgently. Papers shuffled. The confidence they walked in with was gone. They asked to settle. Quietly. Desperately. We declined. When the ruling came down days later, I read it twice because my brain couldn't accept it the first time. The judge didn't just rule in my favor. She laid out exactly why Daniel's behavior mattered. Hidden assets, bad faith, attempts to manipulate the process. The house was mine. The majority of the assets were mine. He was ordered to compensate me for money he'd funneled elsewhere and to cover legal fees. Daniel tried to call me after that. Different numbers, voicemails full of apologies and anger tangled together. I didn't respond. Some conversations don't deserve oxygen. What stayed with me wasn't the money or the win, though those mattered. It was the shift. The moment when everyone in that courtroom had to update the story they'd already written about me. I wasn't the woman who couldn't afford a lawyer. I wasn't the quiet one who'd take whatever she was given. I was someone who showed up anyway. And here's the part people don't talk about enough. Winning doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like quiet relief. Like breathing normally again. Like standing in your own kitchen weeks later and realizing the space finally feels like yours. I painted walls Daniel used to hate. I rearranged furniture without asking anyone's opinion. I slept better. Daniel lost more than the case. He lost the illusion that he could always outsmart people just because they underestimated them. And maybe that's the real reason he was so angry. Not because he lost, but because he lost to someone he thought would never fight back. So, if you're watching this and you've ever been dismissed, talked over, laughed at, or written off because you didn't look powerful enough, hear me when I say this. Being underestimated is not a weakness, it's leverage. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone stopped paying attention to. Now, I'm curious what you think. Was the judge right to come down that hard? Do you believe people like Daniel ever really learn, or do they just get better at hiding? And have you ever seen someone get written off, only to come back stronger than anyone expected? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and I promise these conversations matter.